Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our Committee on Energy, Economic Development, and Tourism. It's Monday, March 14th, 3 o'clock in room 224. We have a number of bills on today's agenda. But before we begin, I have to make a few housekeeping announcements. This meeting, including the audio and video of remote participants, is being streamed live on YouTube, and you can find links to viewing options for all Senate meetings on the live and on-demand page of the legislature's website. In the unlikely event that we hit some type of technical turbulence and this hearing takes a terrible nosedive, the committee will reconvene to discuss any outstanding business. A public notice will be posted on the legislature's website. And for those of you who are participating remotely, all testifier audio will be muted and video disabled until shortly before it is your turn to testify. So on our agenda today, first up is House Bill 1552 HD1 relating to the relating to the Stadium Development District. For our testifiers, we have Ryan Andrews from the stadium.
Good afternoon, Chair Wakai and Vice Chair Misalucha, members of the committee. My name is Ryan Andrews. I'm the acting manager of Aloha Stadium, and the authority stands on our written testimony in support of this measure, and we appreciate the clarification that this measure brings to the composition of the Stadium Authority Board. Mahalo for the opportunity to provide testimony.
Thank you, Ryan. That is all we have for our live testifiers. Any members, any questions for Mr. Andrews?
Just a comment, Chair.
Yes.
Mr. Andrews, just wanted to say mahalo for your support, because I think particularly for IAEA, it's important to have the community be represented in the Stadium Authority. And I represent that district, so mahalo.
Thank you.
They're so lucky to have Connect represented.
Thank you, Chair.
Okay, we will move on to our next measure, that is House Bill 1982 HD2 relating to taxes. And first in our testifiers list, we have Isaac Choi from the Department of Taxation or his designee. Anyone from DOTAX? Okay, 3, 2, 1, goners. Okay, next we have Chris Lee, the film producer, not the senator, testifying on behalf of the University of Hawaii. Is Chris with us? Yay, hi Chris.
Hi, I'm actually Chris Lee, the founder and director of the Academy for Creative Media at the University of Hawaii. We stand on our testimony and happy to answer any questions today.
Okay, thank you for joining us, Chris. Georgia Skinner from DBED.
Aloha. Oh, I can't start my video, but I'm here. Start my video. Thank you.
Part of creative media and
yes, just a little glitch. Hello.
Great to see you,
Hi, thank you. Thank you, Chair, Vice Chair, and members of the committee. Georgia Skinner from Creative Industries Division, DBED. And we stand on our testimony with support for the extension of the credit sunset date to December 31, 2032, and also support the areas in which we talk about the additional positions and the new reporting requirements for DBED. We do defer to the Department of Taxation on any of the fiscal impacts regarding the loan out sections and the rest, and are here to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us, Georgia. Rick Galindez from Island Film Group. Mr. Galindez, are you there? 3, 2, 1, move it on. Tom Yamachika from the Tax Foundation of Hawaii. Hi, Tom.
Thank you, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Tom Yamachika from Tax Foundation. We have a number of technical concerns that are highlighted in our testimony. For example, for the elimination of the reasonable basis defense for the penalty for erroneous credit claims. We need to have the committee understand that this elimination of the reasonable basis defense applies not only to the film credit, but to everything else. So earned income tax credit, food excise tax credit, household dependent care services credit, or the credit for low-income household renters, for example, all become no-fault penalties. And we don't think that's a very good idea when the credits are complex and the people who are claiming them tend not to be like tax practitioners. So that's that. For general excise tax withholding, we simply are pointing out that right now the general excise tax withholding is in the income tax law, which we think is tough for practitioners to find, and we have drafted substitute language and included that within our testimony. I'd be happy to answer any questions on this.
Okay, thank you, Tom. We're going to take questions at the end. And I saw Rick Galindez walking around. Can we go back to him? Rick, are you there?
Yes. Yes, I am here, Senator. Okay, are we back? Okay, sorry about that. Yes, I am here. Thank you. We're actually on our first day of shooting our Hallmark movie. We're up in Paradise Park, so apologize for the delay in getting here. We'd like to stand on our testimony. We've had a lot of discussions about this. As Tom Yamachika pointed out, one of our concerns is the elimination of the good faith defense, which is there for a reason. People make mistakes. People have computational errors. There's no reason to say people who make a mistake would just be penalized automatically for making a good faith error. A couple other provisions of the bills, the general excise tax withholding, income tax withholding, we do support. It is going to put another administrative burden on production, but we do want the state to collect the taxes that it's owed, and we think this would be, I guess, an appropriate way to do so. Finally, I think we had some slight language clarifications. Also, probably most important to us is the GE tax rate for independent production financing to be moved to 0.5%, which is where it was for 11 years prior to 2019. As we discussed in our testimony, the large studios have wholly owned production company subsidiaries in Hawaii to film, and because they make investments into those entities do not pay general excise tax on the income they receive. However, independent film productions such as this Hallmark production, where we are paid by Hallmark to make these movies, currently the Department of Taxation is taking the position that that income is subject to 4.5% general excise tax, which effectively just increases the cost across the board. Now, we are still paying general excise tax on all of our vendors, and we'll be collecting general excise tax for the loan out. So all of the economic activity in the state still occurs, and all of the taxes that are generated in the by the general excise tax and consumption is still happening. We are just requesting that at that top level, when our company gets paid to make a movie for Hallmark or make a national commercial, that companies in our position are only required to pay the 0.5%, which again was the law until late 2019. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you for your commentary, Rick. We're going to move on to Van Stevenson from the Motion Picture Association of America.
Thank you, Senator Wokai, members of the committee. Appreciate the opportunity. We stand on our testimony. We fully support the extension of the production tax credit till 2032. We think it provides a stable, predictable credit for Hawaii and for attracting more production. And we think the amendments that we've offered, which Senator Wokai, we talked about early on, will provide a fair and equitable way to tax loanouts as well as the employees from a withholding perspective. Thank you very much. I'm available to answer questions.
Thank you, Vance. We have Gerald Silva has submitted testimony opposition, and Sandy Wong has joined us. Hi, Sandy.
Yes. Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair. My name is Sandy Wong. I would echo the testimony of Island Films. Specifically, I support the extension of the sunset. I do support reinserting the good faith defense. And as Mr. Galindez said, we would like to make some changes in Section 4, provision M to level the playing field between independent studios and the big studios. Available for any questions. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Sandy. And that's all we have for our live testifiers. Members, any questions? Senator Misalucha?
Georgia, if you can come back, please.
Yes, hi.
Hi, aloha.
Aloha.
I know the Department of Taxation is not here, so unfortunately, you're going to have to respond to. I'd like to have a better understanding of the 4 FTE positions, and I guess I'm trying to align it with the activity that the film industry has here, because 4 seems like an extraordinarily high number, and so. How much activity are we talking about here that we anticipate with people or companies trying to claim that film tax credit?
All right, well, let me start off by giving you the landscape of what exists in DBED, which is actually 2 people currently handling the film tax credit program. I believe these 4 positions are requested from DOTAX for DOTAX. So I believe they are more of a function of auditors and reviews. We average about 40 individual tax credit applications per year, except for 2020, when of course that was cut way down. So in our area within creative industries, we absolutely have only 2 people currently handling it, and one of them is myself. So the film production has increased greatly. We see that that's going to continue to rise. And so the reason we supported the idea of DOTAX having additional positions, I can't really speak to why 4. That would be a question for Director Choi, but I could certainly see us splitting that and be able to have at least one other position in DBED to help support the workload that we have.
Okay, thank you, Georgia.
You're welcome.
Any further questions? Georgia, I'm sorry, but you're going to be the de facto tax department today.
Oh, how did this happen to me? Okay, go ahead.
You're so lucky you showed up today.
Yeah.
In Barron Stevens' commentary, he raised, I thought, 2 very interesting points about, first of all, the 4 positions, if they are funded through a fee, do we really need the CPA review? Because it seems like that would be just double the amount of cost for the film production, right? I don't even know how much the CPAs have to get are paid, but to have that in top of this other fee would seem just redundant. So if we were to go and enact a fee, should we get rid of the CPA review requirement?
I wouldn't advise it. I would say that it, and I agree, I understand why MPA is bringing this up. And that is an additional fee on top of what is happening. I believe in one of the earlier hearings, it was mentioned, why can't these just be in the budget as opposed to having a fee? So that's one solution. Again, I don't want to speak on behalf of Director Choi or the Department of Taxation, but from my perspective, I would say that why the AUPRs are absolutely necessary is that we do not, as DBED and Creative Industries in the Film Office, do not have experts on staff that are auditors. Okay, so our job has been made a lot simplified, but not to the point of not needing more staff to be able to support what we do. Part of this issue is that the AUPRs are very important for, they go through and validate so that, again, we as a staff person and myself who has other responsibilities besides overseeing this credit at this time, it's just temporary. It is really critical that we're able to find a way to be able to support the ongoing AUPR. I think it has helped enormously, even in the smaller productions. And I do realize that it is more expensive for them. So I know that was also a change which we did support, and that it's still all filers have to have the AUPR. The other thing about, one other mention, if I may, is that within the existing Act 275 law now, DBED is allowed to charge a fee. We have not activated that for processing any kind of reviews. So that should be dealt with as well if this is going to pass as is.
Why haven't you implemented any fees then?
Not enough bandwidth to be able to handle. I mean, on paper, we have 14 people. Currently, there's 6 of us, including me. So,
Right, but if you charge those fees, you could be staffing up to review all of these applications, right?
Yeah. I think it's a benefit, but again, I'm glad that all of the fees are on the table, and we think that it's important to continue this discussion on whether it's relevant or not, as MPA said, to have both. I think we need to drill down a little bit further with DOTAX and come back to you in the committee, as well as MPA and others that are interested in how this would work.
Okay, wait, I think MPA doesn't want to have both. They want one or the other.
Understood.
So going back to the reason why we had the CPA review process to certify the credit was because there were not auditors in DOTAX. But now DOTAX says they want 4 people to audit. So to me, one of these has to give.
Understood.
If we really, if we staff up DOTAX, then we don't need the CPA review, right? We just take that entire burden off of you.
That would be fine.
Okay, so it's okay if we go the route of implementing a fee to hire positions at DOTAX, we'll just get rid of all of the CPA review and all of the certification responsibilities on your office. Is that fair?
If DOTAX is willing to take them on, certainly.
Yeah, well, it sounds like they are. Okay, sorry, one more question. MPA talked about the fees because right now it's kind of squishy, right? What the fees, I mean, who knows? DOTAX could charge $500,000 for each certification or application, right? There is no limits on what the fee could be. And MPA started off by saying 0.1% capped at $20,000 per application. You think $20,000 per application is a reasonable maximum?
A reasonable maximum for the large productions, perhaps. I think whether it's that application of a fee or a sliding scale. What we don't want to do is we don't want to impair our smaller productions, who certainly would not be able to, stomach that. And we know that if it's a percentage of what they're either claiming or a percentage of what they are spending, that needs to be clarified as well.
Okay, well, the cap was for the big boys, and for the smaller productions, it's at 0.1% of the application.
Okay.
So, all right, since DOTAX not here, we'll just have them figure that out in WAM and put in the MPA suggestions.
Okay.
Members, any questions? Okay, thank you, Georgia, and everyone else. We're going to move on to our next bill on the agenda. That is House Bill 1983, another film bill. And we have Craig Kirai from Budget and Finance as submitted commentary. And back to you, Georgia.
Aloha, Georgia Skinner, Creative Industries Division, DBED, Chair, Vice Chair, and members of the committee. We have offered comments on this measure. We do want to emphasize that we do have a film permitting program, and as this bill moved through, that was changed back to the department. So we appreciate that, and we do have an effective system in that way. I think we're here for any comments or questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Georgia. We have Rick Galindez, Island Film Group. Rick, are you still with us? I think he said he was on a film set, so maybe he might have been called back to duty. That's all I have for live testimony. Members, any questions for Georgia Skinner? Georgia, I have one question.
Sure.
Wouldn't it be smart for us, since we're creating a position here in DBED, to add an administrative assistant?
Absolutely. I'm glad you brought that up. Again, we have one secretary for the entire division, and we're a startup within DBED. So you could say that we're having scalability challenges, and that would be critical, not only for an additional exempt position, but a support for both the division and the film industry development.
Right, because if we were to create this particular position, whoever this liaison would be, probably would need some level of support since that person will have to kind of connect all of the county film offices, correct?
Yes, and I think it'll be done again, as we emphasized in our testimony, in collaboration with the existing civil service employees that are already in the film office. And I think it's important that we have the proper staffing to execute and effectuate what we are asked to do. So we do want to make sure our statutory house is in order. And I would support an admin assistant probably at a 4 or 5 level. That'll be a SR 24.
Thank you, Georgia.
Thank
Members, I
you.
also have to mention that Ryan Ozawa submitted testimony in support of this measure. Any final questions for Georgia? Okay, we're going to move on to our next bill. That is House Bill 2225, relating to the Hawai'i Technology Development Corporation. Only person signed up for live testimony is Len Higashi from HTDC.
Aloha Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee, Len Higashi from Hawai'i Technology Development Corporation. We stand on our written testimony in support of this bill, which restores funding for 3 core programs that we've been operating since 2016, but had to forego last year due to budget restrictions. I did note BNF's comment that these appropriations were in the admin's budget, but I do want to point out they were taken out on the House. So appreciate you hearing this bill and available for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Len. And members, all this testimony, written testimony for this measure is in support, just to let everyone know. Support came from John Paul Gideon, Ryan Ozawa, Isar Mustafanshad, Patrick Sullivan, Summer Shigei, Craig Lindholm, Ron Weidenbach, Brian Miyamoto, George Fain, Lauren Zerbel, Steve Miller, Trevor Arborzua, Food Manufacturers Association, and Robbie Melton. Everyone is in support. Members, any questions for Mr. Higashi? Yes, Senator Misalucha.
Hi, Len. Aloha.
Aloha Chair.
By the way,
Vice Chair.
Nice pictures. I love the reports, and I just wanted to dig deeper just to help me understand some of the figures that you had indicated here.
Sure.
So are we looking then, because I know in the bill itself, there's like blank appropriation, but you talked about restoring the funding from prior years. So on your testimony, on your first page, you had appropriation. So it's like in fiscal year 19, 1.5 million. And then fiscal year 2020, 1 million. Are we talking about on
Correct.
SBIR?
This is
So are
for
we
the
looking-
SBIR program. I was trying to make it clear because it's been appropriated by the legislature every year since FY16. It started at 2 million and it had gone down to 1 million. And I was just pointing out because the admins, thank you.
So your recommendation would then be 1 million, 1.5 million? What's your?
Yeah, we appreciate,
recommendation?
we were in the administration's budget, and that's the process for HTDC at 1 million and for the SBIR, but that was the process started, in a very different environment, started, back in July or August. And since the economic forecast has been positive with more funding available, so, clearly through this sheet or through our testimony, we're pointing out there's more demand and opportunity than we have been funding.
That's what I was actually alluding, because I think in your testimony, you said that there's more demand, that there's more clamor, so I'm asking whether, so the number of awards was 14 in 2020. Do you have any figures that would help us understand how many actually applied?
Oh, there's a number of applications there. So 16 applied and 14 were awarded. I'll point out that the awards are up to 50%, but because we have a lot of qualified applicants, we decided to award more applicants, but smaller dollar amounts. So less of what they asked for, which is it's an evaluation committee that determines that.
And I was actually, I'm not sure whether I'm doing the math right, but I'm a former banker, so hopefully I do know my math. But accelerators, under that accelerator section, you said there were 49 companies. And also it invested 283. I wasn't sure how many, so how much we gave to those 49 companies.
It's so we fund the accelerator programs. The accelerator programs fund the company. So state money
It goes straight to them. I see.
The state money goes to the programs. The programs raise private sector capital, investment capital, which creates opportunities for startups. It's a tremendous leverage for the state, and that's why we're advocates of this model. But in 2021, we pointed out we had $205,000 awarded, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So you divide that by 6, average award of 30,000 and change per accelerator. These accelerators, some of them raise private sector capital and make awards in the amount of 25,000 to 100,000 per company. It would take a little deeper explanation on how the accelerators work.
Okay.
But the state subsidy for these programs is very small compared to the amount of capital provided to the companies, and that's why we are supportive of this program, of these programs. And we're supportive. The House started this original draft of this bill started with I believe it was 10 million for the SBIR, 2 million for each of the MAP and accelerator programs, and they were just pointing out that there are many opportunities, and every year we choose, where HTDC is happy to administer, but we administer based on the budget that we're provided. Every year it really has been dependent on the economy.
Well, considering that we're trying to diversify the economy and your office is right smack into that efforts, I think you need to be supported.
Thank you, Senator. Appreciate it.
Excellent question. Members, any further questions for Mr. Higashi?
Yeah, I got a question.
Yep.
So, as going forward and for this accelerated program, I mean, how successful, I guess, perspective, I guess, or your future of looking into this, how positive of out of these businesses that you think you might be helping that's actually going to reach their goal in what you guys are trying to provide for them?
The accelerator thank you for the question, Senator. The accelerator programs vary, and that's on purpose. Some of the accelerator programs are for digital startups, internet startups. Those ones may be what you're alluding to in terms of how likely are they to be successful. That one is a numbers game. We support a lot of companies and a few get to the finish line. But I do want to point out we have other programs that are directly for value added or manufacturing companies, where pretty much every company that's supported is increasing their revenue and contributing jobs to the state. We have programs that are now assisting with social impact. One of the new accelerator programs that we had funded, they're doing good for the community. They're contributing in ways that we believe are helpful. So the impacts are now, and we're very bullish on these programs.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, Len, I just have a couple of questions. Following up on Senator Misalucha's questions about the accelerators. The monies that you put into the accelerators is for operations of these 5 accelerators, correct? We're not actually equity investors in any of these accelerators.
Through this, we are only subsidizing some of the operations, not investing into the companies. There are other vehicles, for example, formerly HSDC, and HTDC is about to embark on a new federal program called SSBCI, which would potentially create funds that could invest into companies and leverage the accelerator programs, but it would be different money. These funds are only for operations.
The SSBCI program, I know we passed a bill kind of setting that up, but that's where the state will get an equity investment into these companies. So they go IPO, they make $1 gazillion, we benefit from that investment, correct?
That is correct.
Another question about your SBIR chart. And I'm intrigued, excuse me, in 2020, that $1 million investment helped create 509 jobs, which I think is substantial compared to the previous year where you had more money and had fewer jobs, 135. What happened in 2020 that had this dramatic bump up in the number of jobs created?
Thank you for the question and thank you for noticing. I think the following chart on the next page dictates that as well, is the amount of federal funds that they are awarded typically for phase 2 is limited to $1.5 million or maybe $2 million per company. But we're allowed to match phase 2 and phase 3. Phase 3 are substantially larger awards. So one award can be upwards of $30 million. Those are the type of successes that we are aiming for and targeting. We don't get them every year, but our program over time has produced more success on that level. Is that clear?
Yeah, no, I just think it's awesome that you're able to leverage $1 million to create $53 million in federal monies and 509 jobs for our neighbors. That is astonishing. Senator Misalucha.
Hi, Len. One last question. So I noticed with interest that most of the or all of the companies that are either mentioned or at least on the accelerator program awards are local companies, right? So I know there's been discussion in the past about ensuring that the monies, the state funds actually are allocated towards local companies in order to generate the kind of momentum that we want to have in our economy. So, but I don't really, in reading the bill, I didn't see any provision for that. So do you think there should be some kind of language that should be inserted? I don't know whether it's already noted somewhere.
Thank you for the question. And this again may be a little complicated answer but the question did come up before, and our testimony pointed out 92% of the companies are headquartered in Hawaii. Different programs have different accelerators have different company profiles. For example, that in the list that I gave you, that in FY21 we funded Blue Startups, a company, an accelerator program like that has a profile where they fund some local companies and some mainland companies, international companies, and they do that on purpose, thinking that this will create a stronger cohort, a group of companies that can support each other. And for digital startups or internet startups, that makes a lot of sense. For a program like Mana'ap, the second one that's listed there, that's for local companies only, 100% local. And it makes sense because they're creating products here. The Accelerate Hawaii is 100% local. So the program fits what profile of company they're trying to support. Our statute does, we do have in our statute for the equity investment that Senator Wakai was talking to about, when HTDC puts equity investment as part of a fund that's going into a company, the amount that we contribute has to go in, the 100% has to go into a Hawaii-based company. We are allowed to co-invest with private sector match. And so if we put up $1 million and the private sector put up $1 million, it would create a $2 million fund. Our obligation or our requirement is that 50% of those funds or the amount that we contribute is invested into Hawaii-based companies. And I believe that's good statute.
You're comfortable with where we're at now. We don't need additional provisions.
Correct.
Inserted. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you
Thank
for
you,
all the
Chair.
questions.
He just wants big numbers, right, Len?
Yeah, yes, thank you, Senator.
Oh,
We're
good
trying
answer.
to,
Okay,
we're trying to get it.
Members, any further questions? Okay, thank you for joining us, Len. We're going to move on to our next bill, that is House Bill 2089 HT1, relating to the renewable portfolio standards. On our testifiers list, we have Scott Glenn from Energy Office.
Aloha, this is Kirsten Baumgart-Turner in place of Scott, who unfortunately couldn't be here. I'm the Deputy Energy Officer for the Hawaii State Energy Office. I want to stand on our testimony in support of HB 2089 HD1. Chair Wakai, Vice Chair Misalucha, and members of the committee, we strongly support this administration bill and we appreciate you hearing it. I just want to make a couple comments. We find that the HD1 version does acknowledge the importance of activities and policies beyond those of the utility, while clarifying and increasing the statutory renewable energy requirements applicable to Hawaii's electric utilities after 2030. So we, as noted in the bill, it would be possible to reach, without this bill, the 100% portfolio standard, with only 79% of the electricity produced from renewable resources. So we thank the committee for hearing this and we respectfully request your approval of the bill. Mahalo. I'll stand by for questions.
Sure. Thank you, Kirsten. Dean Yoshino from DCCA.
Aloha, Chair Wakai, Vice Chair Misalucha, members of the committee, Dean Yoshino with the Division of Consumer Advocacy. You have our written testimony and we stand in support of this measure. I am available for questions if any. Thank you.
Thank you, Dean. And we have Micah Bunikata from Ulupono.
Good afternoon, Chair Wakai, Vice Chair Misalucha, members of the committee. Micah Bunikata on behalf of the Ulupono Initiative. We'll stand on our testimony in support of this measure. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Enjoy the fishing, Micah. Mark Asano from Hawai'i Electric.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. We support the bill as currently amended, and I'm here to take any questions after. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Mark. And we have Ted Boland from Climate Protectors of Hawaii.
Thank you, Chair Wakai, Vice Chair Misalucha, and members of the committee. Ted Boland on behalf of the Climate Protectors Hawaii. This bill is essentially correcting a mistake in the calculation of the RPS, the Renewable Portfolio Standard. Currently, that is based on the percentage of sales. The public understanding and the proper way to do this is based on generation. This is particularly important as we increase the amount of customer generation that is supplying our power, for example, rooftop photovoltaics, as opposed to utility supplied. The point of the RPS is to see what utilities supply, and I appreciate this committee's willingness to hear this bill, which frankly, this is a mistake that we've been trying to fix for several years, and it's great that the committee is hearing this bill. I'm available for questions. I appreciate the opportunity to testify. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us, Ted. Members, that's all I have for our live testifiers. Any questions of those who have joined us via Zoom? Oh, Senator Misalucha.
So Ted, you alluded to Ted, Climate
Yes,
Protector.
I'm here.
Yeah, you alluded to how it hasn't passed in the past. What was the problem?
I wasn't directly involved. I just know that there were, I think it, like many bills, it just didn't get through the finish line. I don't know that there was a problem, but I wasn't directly involved. So I guess I'm speculating.
I'm just wondering because all the testimonies for this bill are all in support.
Yeah, it does seem curious. No opposition, lots of support. Thank you for the question.
Thank you.
Members, any further questions? Okay, thank you, everyone. We're going to move on to the last bill on this agenda. That is House Bill 1809 HD3 relating to taxation. First on our testifiers list is we have Isaac Choi or someone from DOTAX. See, 3-1. Okay, we're moving on. Scott Glenn from the State Energy Office, or Kirsten.
Mahalo, Chair Wakai and Vice Chair Misalucha. I'm again standing in Kirsten Baumgart-Turner, Deputy Energy Officer for the Hawaii State Energy Office, standing in for Scott Glenn. We stand in support of this bill and just want to mention that if the eligibility for the tax credit is to include a life cycle greenhouse gas emissions analysis of the renewable fuels in comparison to the greenhouse gas emissions of specific fossil fuels, and a determination of whether the renewable fuels have life cycle emissions substantially below that of fossil fuels, it would also be helpful to include definitions and criteria to be used in this determination, and that an indication of the effect of the assessment, if any, on the eligibility of the taxpayer for the tax credit. And finally, we also would need to be, the State Energy Office would need to be appropriately resourced to perform the certifications. We just want to point out that we have requested in our budget an energy economics specialist position in the executive supplemental budget, and to serve as a subject matter expert on economics and financing of energy systems. And so that position's duties and responsibilities would include being able to do the certification of these tax credits. So we want to point that out as you consider resourcing us for this. Mahalo, and I'll stand by for questions.
Thank you, Kirsten. Tom Yamachika from the Tax Foundation.
Thank you, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Tom Yamachika from the Tax Foundation. We've submitted written testimony. The basic point of it is that with the tax credit, in generally, you don't know what you're buying and you don't know what you're paying for it. So we suggest that the committee may want to approach this particular area with an appropriation and perhaps a grant program instead of opening up a tax credit to all comers and trying to establish criteria that people may or may not work around. I'd be happy to answer any questions. Thank you very much for the opportunity to testify.
Thank you for joining us, Tom. Julie Yunker from Hawai'i Gas.
Sure. Hi. Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, and members of the committee. Julie Yunker with Hawai'i Gas in support and stand on our written testimony. We do, however, respectfully ask the committee to consider the following amendments to the bill. To add wastewater in the definition of a renewable source, include a refundable tax credit where the taxpayer can access the credit immediately and the state decreases their tax liability by 30%. This immediate tax credit can help reduce project costs, which can be passed down to the ratepayer. We also ask you to consider amending the bill to require that any critical infrastructure information, including details that are production specific, such as location and amount of renewable fuel production, be held confidential as a matter of national security and Hawaii's energy security. If this information publicly could make Hawaii vulnerable to malicious attacks on its critical energy infrastructure and supply. We also provide these additional comments regarding the life cycle greenhouse gas analysis. We understand the legislative intent of this amendment and agree that the analysis is important. However, we would like to call attention to the fact that life cycle greenhouse gas emissions of a project is mandated by statute to be part of the Public Utilities Commission decision-making process. Requiring the HSEO to recertify this annually is redundant and superfluous and will increase the cost of applying for this tax credit. Due to the redundancy and cost impacts, we respectfully request consideration of this committee to delete subsection B4. We appreciate the benefits this legislation will bring to allow Hawaii to benefit from affordable energy while sustaining our reliability and resiliency. We respectfully request the committee to include these amendments and pass HB 1809 HD3. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us, Julie. We have Ted Boland from Climate Protectors of Hawaii.
Thank you again, Chair Wakai, Vice Chair Misalucha, and members of the committee. Ted Boland again for the Climate Protectors Hawaii. we're strongly in support of renewable tax credits. We need the renewable alternatives, and we thank the committee for considering this bill, and I urge them to pass it. However, I would say that not all renewables are created equal in terms of their impact on the environment, and that should be taken into account in terms of the committee. The point of replacing fossil fuels with renewable power generation is largely to reduce greenhouse gases. We're facing a climate emergency. We've got global warming that seems to get worse every time we look at it. And the state should not be incentivizing renewables that contribute to the climate emergency at this time. The tax credit for wood burning biomass, for electric generation, and for hydrogen production should be deleted from the bill. Greenhouse gas life cycle analysis is critical. Some biomass is okay, but not wood burning biomass, which has a long replacement time and actually contributes a lot to global warming because you lose the sequestration of the trees when you cut them, and then you're emitting carbon dioxide into the air when you burn them. So it's actually maybe worse than fossil fuel. It's at least as bad. So the Climate Protectors Hawaii are proposing 2 amendments to this bill. On page 2, lines 17 and 19, it should read, certify that renewable fuels have life cycle greenhouse gas emissions at least 75% below the lowest fossil fuel life cycle greenhouse gas emissions for equivalent British thermal units. That's just designed to put some specific numbers around the vague substantially that's in the bill now. And on page 7, lines 17 to 18, it should read, renewable feedstocks means biomass crops other than trees or wood. And this is again to eliminate the reliance on wood biomass, which whatever other merits it may have is really bad for the climate and should not be incentivized by the state at this time. Thank you for the opportunity to testify. Thank you for hearing this bill. I'm available for questions.
Thanks for joining us, Ted. That's all I have for live testifiers. Members, any questions of those who joined us? Yes, Senator Revere.
Thanks. Maybe this is for Energy Office. Is Kristen there? It's I'm just trying to understand the amount of energy that 15 billion BTUs is relative to somewhere else. Somebody mentioned 2.5 billion BTUs. How can I understand the volume of that? Because there's a minimum level of production required here.
Yeah, and I was afraid you would ask me a hard question like that. I'm going to have to defer that to Maria Tomei, who is our expert in the conversion of energy thermal units. And so I'll just tell you that the amount that is in the bill was considered to be appropriate for the anticipated market. So, but I'll have to get back to you on that. I apologize.
Okay, thanks. I don't know if there's anyone else, Chair, that could just get, I mean, we're trying to set a minimum there, but what is the purpose of I mean, what is the minimum? Why are we restricting other businesses from taking advantage of this credit with a such a floor, right? I'm just trying to understand the background of it. So I don't know if there's anybody there that could testify to that.
I don't.
Kristen, maybe you can get back to us then. We'll leave it there. Thank you.
Yeah, I don't know the history of that. I apologize because I wasn't involved in it when the renewable fuel standard was first put in place.
Thank you.
I know a lot of us understand megawatts and associated costs and output from that, but the BTUs, because this is thermal, right? It's about heat in many cases. So it's kind of a different measure. So I think we all need to kind of wrap our brains around how BTU measurements are very different from megawatt measurements. So yeah, if Kirsten, if you could have Ms. Tomei kind of give us maybe a little one pager kind of describing the differences, and exactly as Senator Revere, 15 billion BTU. I mean, it's a number, but we're gonna have, all of us have a hard time wrapping our brains around how big of a number or how small of a number that is.
Yeah, I just sent her the question, and so we should get it back pretty quick. However, she is in a meeting, so.
Totally understandable. I thank you, Kirsten. Any more questions for Kirsten? Okay, I understand that DOTAX or a representative from them has joined us. Anyone from DOTAX online?
Yay. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
I apologize, we're having trouble on top of this end. Archie, on behalf of Isaac Troy and the Department of Taxation, the department will stand on his written testimony offering comments. I was also here earlier for the previous first measure, but unfortunately couldn't hear me. Thank you.
Okay. Members, any questions for RCA or DOTAX regarding this renewable energy tax credit?
Not sure if the guy's name, the one who know to cut the trees. Not sure of his name.
Oh, Ted Boland.
Yeah. Can I ask him a question?
Ted, are you still with us?
I am still with you. I'm having trouble starting the video.
Okay. My question is, I mean, I understand you want to take a lot of these stuff out because of global warming and all of this, yeah. But what are we going to do for like neighbor islands that grew these trees in forestries in anticipation of using that back for energy and converting some of our old sugar mills that used to burn sugar and generate energy like on Maui. So the reason why I bring this up, because I don't know what part of the island you live. I live on the island, that's part of the island that has all the renewables, have all the energy plants, have all the dumps, the landfills, the treatment plants and everything. So if we're going to start sharing or want to share or not having these certain things in the community, I'd like to know what you're going to do when these things are not viable or sustainable. How are we going to go if we start eliminating a lot of these energy, like even like from the treatment plant. I don't know if you ever went there. I went to a tour over there, converting the waste into gas, and then we use it for energy. Doing away with those things and burning of the trees that was made for fuel. What will we do if we do away with all of that and stop doing that, and know that our H-Power, when our taxpayers paid for it, it was for burning green waste, beds, everything that you could think of for generating energy. So when we start eliminating these things, what are these energy plants that we had invested a lot of money in? Because Hawai'i Electric right now is not ready to convert to all of these things that we wish that they could catch up with what we want them to, but they're not going to. So when we start doing away with this and start making things not possible, or taking it out of a bill or trying to eliminate it, how are we going to go on now if there is no more landfills on the island and we cannot do anything else but burn our green waste? What are we going to do in the future going forward? And I'm talking about 10 years or less, when there's no possibility of having these options on the island, because we cannot throw our rubbish in the ocean and we cannot ship it. So what are we going to do with all of these things if we start eliminating it one by one as possible energy sources and reaching our goal in getting away from oil? I mean, these are possible ways of getting away from using crude oil and having Hawai'i Electric convert, taking away the coal and all of that. But if we continue to eliminate the elimination of those things, how fast do you think we're going to be able to get to our goals if we don't have these viable options in the future?
Thank you, Senator Favela. I appreciate your question. I'm glad you're looking forward to how we're going to meet our energy needs. It's entirely appropriate that members of the committee do that and think about it. So I really appreciate the question. I'm not at this time, climate protectors at this time are not proposing to eliminate trash credit or to eliminate trash burning. I think there's some environmental issues around that, but that's not part of our proposal here. We're just talking today about wood burning. And at this point, we don't have any, we're not talking about closing wood burning plants. We're not talking about closing down plants that are operating anywhere per se. We're just talking about not giving tax credits to a technology that is particularly bad for the environment. And there are other ways to meet firm power needs. There are other ways to meet total power needs, but we don't need to burn wood or wood chips in order to do it right now. So, I think you're you're assuming my proposal is much broader than it is. We are just talking about tax credits that use wood burning for generating electricity or for producing hydrogen, much of which is produced from fossil fuels. So we're trying to reduce fossil fuel use, and we're also trying to reduce wood burning, which is, in terms of greenhouse gas life cycle analysis, at least as bad as fossil fuels. Not talking about trash, not talking about old sugar plants.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks. Members, any further questions? A quick question for Kirsten, Energy Office.
Yes.
Kirsten, I'm looking over your testimony, and a lot of it has to do with the certification process and some amendments you want to have done. But by reading your recommendations, you're kind of going from certifying to getting into the tax approval part of this bill. Is that what your intention is with the Hawaii State Energy Office?
No.
Be part of the approval body for these credits as they become certified?
No, it's the approval of the greenhouse gas emission certification that we were addressing. Yeah, we don't want to take the place of DOTAX, and we defer to them for implementation of this. However, we have handled the certification of the renewable fuels for DOTAX to then provide the tax credit. Historically, our office has done that.
Okay, but does that go beyond what the certificate, the intent of the certification is to make sure that those who are applying with whatever source of energy are in fact doing what they outlined, not so much looking at greenhouse gases, right? Which is what you want to look at.
Our amendment wasn't to look at the greenhouse gases. We're just commenting on that. But however, I think we do think it's a very good thing. But in order to be able to do that kind of certification, we're needing to have the resources to do it, because it would be in addition to what we have done historically. And as you know, we had a drastic cut in our staff over the past 3 years, and we're hoping to restaff under the executive budget that's proposed now, and that one of the positions would indeed allow us to do that.
Okay, got it. Thank you. Members, any further questions? If not, thank you. We are going to take a brief recess prior to taking the vote. Thank you, everyone, for your patience. We're reconvening the Committee on Energy, Economic Development, and Tourism in room 224 at 3 o'clock on this March 14th. We contemplated a number of bills and have a number of recommendations. For the first one, it's House Bill 1552 HD1 relating to the Stadium Development District. We heard overwhelmingly positive testimony from one person and would like to move this measure out as is. Members, any discussion? If not, Senator Misalucha, I vote yes.
Members, we are voting on HB 1552 HD1. Chair recommends pass as is. Chair votes aye. Vice Chair votes aye. Senator Lee.
Aye.
Senator Revere.
Aye.
Senator Pavella.
Aye.
Chair, your recommendation is adopted with 5 votes.
Fantastic. On House Bill 1982 HD1 relating to taxes. This is our film tax credit bill. We want to tighten things up, but not make things too tight. So we're going to make a number of recommendations. One, first is to allow for good faith exemption. We put this into our Senate bill, and this allows for the public, if they make a simple mathematical mistake, you're not going to just penalize them because of that. And we just don't want to presume that they're guilty if they make a mistake, rather than in the language right now, there's a presumption of guilt, and they have to prove themselves in this sense. So we want to allow for a good faith exemption, similar to language from Senate Bill 2079. We'd like to also take Island Film Group's recommendation to, let me read this. Income tax withholding for payments to loan-out companies is limited for services performed in the state under Section 1, and to be consistent with the same language, it should be included in Section 4M related to GE tax withholding for payments to loan-out companies. This is again where we went from 0.5% to 4.5%, and this will allow for the smaller companies to benefit from that 0.5% that is already enjoyed by the big production companies. We're also going to take the Tax Foundation recommendation of relocating the language of the tax withholding requirements from Chapter 235 HRS relating to income tax to Chapter 237 HRS relating to general excise tax. Right now, it's in the wrong section of law. I'm going to take the Motion Picture Association's recommendations, which were twofold. This is regarding the fees that would be paying for the 4 people that would eventually be established in DOE tax. Because right now the fees are just kind of wide open. We have no idea what DOE tax could charge. We want to put some level of guardrails around them. So we'd like to start the conversation that whatever the fees may be, it starts off at 1/10 of 1% of the entire credit, and that whatever that figure is will be capped at $20,000 for an application. So not more than $20,000 can be assessed as a fee by DOE tax on whoever the entity might be. And also we're going to change the withholding percentage from 10% to the applicable rate being 4.5%. That is similar to the language we had in Senate Bill 2079. And we're going to have technical non-substantive amendments. And I almost forgot. The last substantive issue is the CPA review that is currently in law. Right now, DBED is tasked with certifying and reviewing the application, and they require CPA review. Since we're shifting all of the oversight over to DOE tax, we're going to take away the certification requirement by DBED to do it and just put the entire onus on making sure this is clean onto the Department of Taxation. So those are all of the amendments to House Bill 1982. Members, any discussion? No?
Good
Okay,
amendments.
good. I'll just confuse
Good
you so
amendments,
much
Chair.
that it's perfect. I'm sorry, what?
Good amendments, Chair.
Oh, great, thank you. So with that, Senator Misalucha, I vote yes.
Members, we are voting on HB 1982 HD2. Chair recommends pass with amendments. Chair votes aye. For the remaining members, are there any reservations? Any opposition? Hearing none, Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you, members. We're on to House Bill 1983 HD1. This is to establish a new position for a film liaison. I'd like to cast this measure out with one amendment. This liaison this liaison will probably need to have an administrative assistant. So we're going to throw in one FTE for an administrative assistant position into this bill. Any discussion? If not, Senator Misalucha, I vote yes.
This is regarding 1983 HD1. Chair recommends pass with amendments. Chair votes aye. For the remaining members, any reservations? Any opposition? Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you. On House Bill 2225 HD1, this is the HTDC Fund Everything bill. We heard from Len Higashi, and I think many of us, or maybe all of us, were quite impressed with what's been done with the few dollars that have been given to him, and have confidence that those dollars are actually helping to diversify our economy, and would like to pass the measure out with technical non-substantive amendments, have Wham fill in all the pukas where the dollar figures should be. Any discussion? If not, Senator Misalucha, I vote yes.
This is regarding HB 2225 HD1. Chair recommends pass with amendments. Chair votes aye for the remaining members. Any opposition? Any reservations? Hearing none, Chair, your recommendation's adopted.
Thank you. On House Bill 2089 HD1, this is the old long-standing struggle between sales versus generation. We're looking like we're finally going to get to a resolution on this bill. Recommendation, though, is to take DCCA's suggested amendment, which is adding the proposed reporting requirement of electric utility companies to report data and trends relating to customer retention or attrition to another section of HRS 269, because Dean Ishino felt that that was more important. So we're not actually moving them into a different section. We're just adding another section to HRS 269 and also making technical non-substantive amendments. Members, any discussion? If not, Senator Misalucha, I vote yes.
Members, this is for HB 2089 HD1. Chair recommends pass with amendments. Chair votes aye. For the remaining members, any reservations? Any opposition? Hearing none, Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Great, thank you, members. And on our last bill, House Bill 1809 HD3, this is the Renewable Fuels Production Tax Credit. We heard much exciting news about BTU, not BTS, BTU. We want to embrace the idea of getting more firm renewables onto our grid through incentives. I would like to make a number of amendments to this bill. A lot of it based on Hawaii Gas's recommendation, which is to include wastewater as a defined renewable source, requiring the state energy office to recertify, not annually as indicated on the current bill, but every 5 years, and make sure that there is a protection of confidential data. Fourth recommendation is to take tax credit up front at a reduced rate. So instead of it having a long drawn out covering of tax liabilities into the future, if a developer wants to take all of it up front, they can, but we'll take it at 70% of whatever the qualified credit is. So either you can take your bite now and have a smaller bite, or you can have multiple bites over a longer period of time to take your full credit. I think this is kind of a novel way of getting what we want and getting the development community interested in renewable opportunities. Also take into account the Clean Power Alliance's recommendation to include bioenergy in the definition of renewable fuels, and that will ensure innovative renewable technologies, whatever they may be now and unbeknownst to us now, to be included. I'll also make technical non-substantive amendments. Members, any discussion on the recommendations? If not, Senator Misalucha, I vote yes.
Members, we are voting on the final measure this afternoon, and that is HB 1809 HD3. Chair recommends pass with amendments. Chair votes aye. For the remaining members who are all present this afternoon, are there any reservations? Any opposition? Hearing none, Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Fantastic. Thank you for your time, everyone. We are adjourned.